Appena la regia mi dice che siamo pronti. Buonasera e benvenuti a tutti, sia in presenza sia a distanza, a questo incontro, il primo incontro di un ciclo estremamente interessante organizzato dalla Fondazione Carli e ospitato qui all'Università Marconi. Qui ho il piacere, diciamo, di fare da padrone di casa e da darvi il benvenuto. Stiamo vivendo un periodo storico particolarmente complesso, particolarmente pieno di eventi, diciamo così, e l'unico modo per riuscire a sopravvivere, sperabilmente riuscire anche a migliorare il nostro futuro è riflettere su quello che su quello che stiamo passando, confrontarci e cercare di capire come possiamo insieme trovare un futuro migliore. E il tipo di problemi che stiamo affrontando, che stiamo vivendo, non sono problemi che riguardano, diciamo, sono problemi che si riflettono e rimbalzano anche dal punto di vista audio. Non sono problemi che si possono affrontare all'interno di un singolo paese, di una singola nazione, sono problemi globali nel senso più completo. E quindi quando la Fondazione Carli, e ringrazio in particolare il Presidente Federico Carli, ci ha proposto di fare questa serie di incontri, di ospitare questa serie di incontri con ambasciatori dei principali paesi per appunto confrontare i punti di vista dei vari paesi del mondo sul tempo che stiamo affrontando, abbiamo accettato molto volentieri, perché è una cosa che dobbiamo pensare e ragionare insieme e non come singolo paese. Quindi grazie davvero per l'iniziativa, abbiamo il piacere di cominciare con uno sicuramente dei paesi più importanti è uno di quelli con cui abbiamo una lunga tradizione di relazioni, che è la Germania. E adesso lascio la parola al Presidente Carli, che poi inviterà l'ambasciatore tedesco qui in Italia, che ringrazio per aver accettato l'invito. Buonasera.
Grazie Rettore, grazie Professor Abbate. Io ci tengo innanzitutto a ringraziare l'Università Guglielmo Marconi per aver accettato di ospitare questo ciclo di seminari, quindi il Rettore, il Presidente Acomanni, ma voglio ringraziare anche il team di lavoro dell'Università che è stato straordinario, la dottoressa De Cunto e tutto il suo staff, così come ringrazio tutti i giovani dell'Associazione Guido Carli che hanno contribuito alla realizzazione di questo primo nostro incontro. E ringrazio naturalmente l'ambasciatore Lucas per aver accettato di inaugurare il ciclo di seminari che abbiamo chiamato il Mondo Nuovo. Il Mondo Nuovo è anche una parte del titolo di un libro che ho pubblicato un paio di anni fa, proprio perché i cambiamenti sono molto veloci, molto rapidi, molto importanti, e quindi interrogarsi su questi cambiamenti e sul ruolo che l'Europa deve giocare all'interno di una cornice che cambia e che l'Italia all'interno dell'Europa deve giocare all'interno di questa cornice è certamente fondamentale. E abbiamo ritenuto che iniziare invitando la Germania fosse il modo migliore per avviare questo ciclo. Non soltanto i nostri due paesi sono legati da vincoli di amicizia, da vincoli culturali, da vincoli economici, estremamente importanti, ma la Germania è il baricentro della Unione Europea, è il paese economicamente, industrialmente, demograficamente più importante dell'Unione. Con l'Italia condivide, l'Italia è insieme alla Germania l'altro paese più industrializzato, la manifattura è la più importante della Unione Europea, quindi ci sono vincoli molto, molto forti, ma era secondo me doveroso e importante iniziare il nostro ciclo di incontri proprio con la Germania. Le sfide globali, il rettore faceva riferimento, sono molteplici, alcune afferiscono al funzionamento del sistema capitalistico, la cui prima sfida è preservare ciò di quello che questo sistema offre di buono, cioè la sua capacità di creare ricchezza, di diffondere benessere. Questo è, diciamo, il punto che questo sistema ha dimostrato di saper fare meglio di ogni altro sistema prima. Dalla rivoluzione industriale a oggi la ricchezza del mondo è cresciuta di oltre 70 volte. Nei secoli precedenti il reddito era cresciuto pro capite, era cresciuto dello 0,05% all'anno, cioè un lunghissimo stato stazionario, e la demografia anche non cresceva, e da allora da 1 miliardo siamo diventati quasi 8 e diventeremo ancora. Quindi questa capacità di creare ricchezza va protetta, perché in Italia in particolare, più in generale in Europa, l'andamento della produttività, questo motore non sta funzionando più così bene. Quindi questa è una prima sfida per la quale noi europei in particolare dobbiamo, insomma, sulla quale dobbiamo riflettere. Poi ci sono naturalmente i 3 problemi di questo sistema, che in italiano si semplificano con le 3 I, l'instabilità, che va attenuata, è un sistema instabile monetariamente, l'economia reale anche, crisi borsine, insomma, è un sistema instabile. 2, è un sistema iniquo, questa ricchezza che produce non si distribuisce in maniera uniforme, e la poi punta diciamo estrema dell'iniquità è la povertà assoluta, che purtroppo sta crescendo anche nei paesi storicamente ricchi come l'Italia, dove il 10% della popolazione ormai vive in condizioni di povertà, gli stessi Stati Uniti d'America, quindi l'iniquità. Terza sfida globale, terza I, l'inquinamento è un semplifico, quindi la sostenibilità di questo sistema. È un sistema capace di generare questa ricchezza, ma che ha un impatto sull'ambiente molto, molto forte. E poi abbiamo altre sfide, che sono quella demografica. Da 8 miliardi diventeremo in un giro di 50-60 anni 11 miliardi, il 90% di questa crescita demografica avrà luogo in Africa, da 1,4 miliardi diventeranno circa 3 miliardi, con pressioni sull'ambiente, a livello migratorio, insomma le sfide sono rilevantissime. E poi dopo ci sono le altre 2 sfide globali, che sono la sicurezza e le crisi sanitarie. Quindi tutte queste sfide richiedono una sola cosa, la cooperazione, e però richiedono anche di capire le visioni differenti che ci sono nel mondo. Per questo appunto noi vogliamo invitare, dopo l'ambasciatore di Germania, anche ambasciatori di paesi extraeuropei, perché le visioni su tutti questi problemi sono molto, molto diverse. Un ultimo, e l'ambasciatore nel suo discorso centrerà l'attenzione su 3 di queste grandi sfide, e cercherà anche di dare con un riferimento che è quello di cui abbiamo parlato quando io ho invitato l'ambasciatore, alle giovani generazioni. Quindi l'idea è rivolgere questo ciclo di seminari soprattutto ai giovani, e infatti poi, quando dopo il discorso dell'ambasciatore ci sarà spazio per le domande, saranno i nostri ragazzi che rivolgeranno loro i quesiti all'ambasciatore. Grazie e buon lavoro. L'ambasciatore parlerà credo in inglese?
Sì, mi ha detto che devo parlare in inglese.
Perfetto.
Ma soprattutto grazie mille signor Presidente Carli per l'accoglienza, professor Abate, studenti, cari studenti. È un grande onore per me questa invitazione per fare questo piccolo discorso sulla Germania e l'idea, la visione della Germania nei confronti di queste sfide. So these are certainly not times for business as usual. Quite the contrary is true. What the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, 3 days after Russia's attack against Ukraine, called the Zeitenwende, the big turning point with regards to this brutal attack on Ukraine that goes far beyond Europe. I think we are currently in the middle of a profound transformation of almost all areas of life. That means geopolitical competition, climate change, digitalization, uncontrolled migration, but not to forget within our societies, fragmentation and polarization, which is increasingly also a problem. So Germany, Italy, and Europe have to give answers to these challenges. And I think we need to give them quickly because the world around us is changing at a mind-boggling speed. And the European Union is now about to start a new sort of institutional cycle with a new commission. Frau von der Leyen presented the new commission today and a new parliament. And I think the next 5 years will be absolutely crucial if you want to assert ourselves as Europeans in a multipolar world, which is characterized by ever more competition. And in my view, the key question is, I mean, there's a question which we as Europeans need to answer, you as also a young generation need to answer. Do we want Europe as a pole in this multipolar world, able to defend our interests and our values, our way of life? Or are we happy with the Europe, which is a sort of a province in world politics, more object than subject? And I think that is a key question which we need to answer, I mean, to ourselves. And this question, I think, has far-reaching consequences for all of us, and particularly for you, the young generation. So today I would like to focus on 3 major challenges related to this key question. There are many others, but I mean, in order to save time, just 3. The first one is the crisis of Europe's competitiveness amidst increasing competition from China and the US. Second, the question, how can we safeguard stability and security in an increasingly dangerous and unstable world? And the third question is about the green transformation, which is absolutely necessary to fight climate change. But the question here is, how can decarbonization succeed without deindustrialization? So on these issues, in particular on the question on how to assure Germany's competitiveness, we are having quite a controversial debate in Germany. And you may have read that the disagreement within the so-called traffic light coalition, consisting of 3 very different parties in Germany, was so substantial that it finally broke apart some weeks ago. However, I think that the end of this coalition is not the end of the world. So we are going to have new elections in Germany on February 23rd. And I'm confident that as an outcome of these elections, we will have a more stable coalition government with a clear sense of where Germany will go in the years to come. So some remarks on the 3 key areas I just mentioned. First, on strengthening European competitiveness. I think it's clear that Europe has some major structural problems here, and I think Mario Draghi, in his very important report on European competitiveness, report to the European Council, sort of demonstrated and made clear, what the problems are. And also the stagnating German economy is a case in point in that respect. So you may have read that we have currently a debate in Germany about the possible closure of 3 Volkswagen plants, and that clearly highlights that the situation is quite serious. I mean, Volkswagen is the icon of German industry. So if we have this sort of discussion, that says something. And it's also clear that, of course, that the problem with the competitiveness of the German automotive industry has a direct impact also on the Italian parts of the Italian industry. So there are both internal and external structural and cyclical reasons for the current problems in the German economy, but I mean, these are problems we all share in Europe. So these are high energy prices, problems on the Chinese market, at the same time increasing Chinese competition here in Europe, also due to highly subsidized Chinese products, shortage of skilled laborers, and also excessive bureaucracy. And US tariffs on EU products may exacerbate the situation. And in the automotive sector, we have the special problem that manufacturers and customers are also lacking some clarity about the pace of the transition towards electromobility. So there are many, many problems we need to tackle in order to improve our competitiveness. And Mario Draghi reports gives us important ideas how to do this. I can only say that in Germany, this report got a mostly positive response from the political parties from the center right to the center left, despite some objections on some aspects on the report. But there is a general view that the Draghi report should serve as a sort of guideline for the work of the European Commission over the next 5 years. The outgoing German government already in summer sort of launched what we call a growth initiative, which partially goes into the same direction as the proposals made by Mario Draghi. So key elements were, reducing the price for electricity, scrapping red tape, opening up opportunities to work beyond the pension threshold, more investment in research and development, and more support to startups. And of course, we were going to see what a new German government next spring will decide, but I think it will go very much into this direction. And generally, I would say, with regard to Germany, I'm not too pessimistic, because still the foundations of the German industry are strong, and one should not underestimate its resilience. However, looking at the bigger picture, it's clear that a more competitive Europe will require a fully developed single market. And that is the key message of another important report by another important Italian, Enrico Letta, reports made to the European Council in spring this year. Interestingly, in this report, he points out that the internal market goes beyond just economic cooperation. And not by coincidence, his report is titled Much More Than a Market. And not by coincidence, I think, and we can freely move around in all member countries. We can study abroad, we can take a job anywhere from Malta to the Polar Circle. And according to official figures, more than 600,000, even more Italians are living in Germany, and among them, more than 5,000 researchers. In fact, Italians are the biggest group of foreign researchers at German universities and research institutions, even before China and India. And that also shows, how far developed, our cooperation and mutual integration is. That is, of course, a tremendous contribution to our society. However, and that is something which struck me from the Letta report, the freedom to move must be accompanied also by a freedom to stay. So we must ensure a sustainable future and economic prosperity for all EU citizens in all member states. And that means creating opportunities everywhere in the European Union so that people that don't want to move have the option to stay and prosper where they are. That means that young Germans from the East shouldn't feel the need to move to the West, as just young Italians from Calabria should be able to make a living also in Calabria. But to achieve this goal, we will need continued solidarity among EU member states, and we need to complete the single market in order to fully exploit its potential in the field of energy, in the field of capital markets, banks, telecom, defense, etc. We usually talk about the enormous potential of the US internal market, but in terms of population, the EU internal market is bigger than the US internal market, but we do not fully exploit our potential. So that is something which we need to tackle as soon as possible. The issue of the necessary solidarity between EU member states, it takes me to the second major challenge, ensuring security in a quite difficult geopolitical landscape. Russia's brutal war of aggression against Ukraine has made us acutely aware that the times are gone in which we could simply take security for granted. Our security is being challenged by multidimensional threats. It's not only Russia. It is also about, the general geopolitical competition. It's about, the increasing sort of competition between the US and China. It's about cyber attacks. It's about AI. It's about the breakdown of arms control regimes. And it's also, finally, about information warfare. And since the Second World War, the United States have guaranteed our security, but now, particularly after Donald Trump's victory, many are looking with some concerns across the Atlantic. We will see how the American president will position himself on transatlantic relations, and there are two major questions here: the future support of the United States to the Ukraine and the future contribution of the United States to NATO. All that against the background, as I mentioned, of an ever stronger focus of the US on the Indo-Pacific and China. The conclusion of all that is Europe will have to make a much greater contribution both to supporting Ukraine and to our own security within the framework of NATO as the key framework for our collective defense and the European Union. And as Europeans, we need to increase our contribution to collective defense within NATO and invest more in our European capabilities. We need more Europe in NATO for the sake of a more balanced transatlantic relationship, and we need to enable the European Union also to act militarily if necessary. Today, 23 NATO member states are paying 2% or more of their GDP on defense. But already today, it is clear that 2% of the GDP will not be enough to meet Europe's defense requirements. And I expect a very interesting debate next year, also with the new Commission in Europe, on the question of how to finance these expenses. In any case, we will need more capable European defense capabilities for joint production and joint procurement in order to benefit from the economies of scale, to avoid procurement, to avoid costly duplication and fragmentation. I think that the highly performative German and Italian defense companies can make a very important contribution to a stronger European defense industrial base. I think in this context, for instance, of the new joint venture recently concluded between Leonardo and the German company Rheinmetall, but there's certainly more options than that. In addition, it is essential that we continue our financial and military support to Ukraine as long as it takes. The Ukraine is not only defending its population and its territory against an attack by Russia, but at the end of the day, I mean, this war and Ukraine's fight is also about the future of the European order and our values, and that's the reason why we need to support the Ukraine. And I think there's a strong support within the political class in Germany from the center right to the center left that Germany must continue its military support as the second largest arms supplier to Ukraine. At the same time, we also have a debate in Germany whether this is the right approach. So two parties which have been particularly successful in the recent state elections in Eastern Germany, the Alternative für Deutschland and the Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht have a very different view on that. The third major challenge that is currently shaping our political landscape is the green transformation. Unfortunately, I have the impression that recently there seems to be a tendency to focus much more on imminent crisis than on the long-term challenge of climate change. But we must not lose focus on the necessary decarbonization of our industries and on reaching the climate goals as agreed upon in the framework of the European Union Green Deal and, of course, the Paris Accords. Much has been said about the costs of green transformation. That's true. But maybe we talk too little about the immense financial and human costs of climate change, as recently demonstrated in Spain or in Emilia-Romagna. Every tenth of a degree more leads to more floods and storms, more droughts and wildfires, more instability and more conflicts about natural resources. At the same time, it's clear that the green transformation must not go at the expense of our economic strength. In that respect, I think the question of energy is absolutely crucial as it plays a decisive role for maintaining our industrial base and protecting the climate. Germany and Italy, as the two leading industrial nations in Europe with huge energy consumption, need green energy at the lowest possible price. And right now, I mean, the energy price we pay here in Europe is much higher than the energy price, for instance, the US or China are paying, and that brings it in a great disadvantage. And that is why the federal government in Berlin continues to focus on developing renewable energy as a sustainable and cost-effective energy source in view of increasing electrification in various sectors, such as transport or heating. Not without progress, I must say. So this year we produced more than 60% of our electricity from renewable energy. Up to 2 years ago, coal had been our largest source of electricity. There are also positive developments on the labor market when it comes to renewable energies. Job creation and green transition can go hand in hand. In 2022, for example, just under 400,000 people were already employed in the renewable energy sector. That is a clear growth, and maybe even some of you maybe should be working in this field as well. It's certainly an area which with a bright future. Ladies and gentlemen, these and other challenges call for a close strategic cooperation between Germany and Italy, as I said, the two leading industrial nations in Europe, but also the founding members of the European Union. In many respects, our two countries sit in the same boat, facing similar challenges. I mentioned some of them. That's dependence on energy, raw material. Our economic structure is similar, with a strong role of small and medium enterprises, etc., etc. So I think we're really sitting in the same boat. And with this in mind, the Chancellor and the Prime Minister Meloni, launched the German-Italian Action Plan as a framework for joint action almost 1 year ago. And I think we are making good progress on the implementation of this action plan. I would only like to mention one lighthouse project, that is the so-called South Central H2 corridor. That's a corridor which should bring green energy, green hydrogen from northern Africa over Italy, Austria, and then finally to southern Germany. So that is really a strategic partnership between Germany and Italy in the field of renewable energy. But I would also like to emphasize the remarkable high degree of agreement between our two countries on important strategic issues, on the Ukraine, for instance, on the Middle East, Africa, NATO, transatlantic relations, also migration, which was a question which was controversial. I think we have made significant progress, and being two leading European expert nations, we share the conviction and the vital interest that Europe must remain competitive in the global economy. And that is why we also agree on the necessity for an open and non-protectionist EU trade policy. And we all hope that still in this year, finally, the Mercosur agreement will be signed. I think that's a very important strategic accord. And I think we also agree that enlarging the European Union is a strategic necessity, as reforming the European Union and its decision-making process is also indispensable to enable our European Union to act more decisively. Germany and Italy have been influencing each other for centuries, and I think we share a common European history and values, but also, as I said, similar geopolitical and demographic challenges. Germany and Italy today are strong partners that can really work together for the mutual benefit of our two countries, for Europe, but also for the liberal world order. There are many challenges to be tackled, and whether we will be able to master these challenges in the years to come will depend increasingly on you, the younger generation. And talking to young people in Germany, in my former posting in France, and now in Italy, I see many concerns from the young people about their future, and these concerns are absolutely justified. But I also see a lot of impressive engagement, idealism, and enthusiasm. And in the book published by Professor Carli titled Italia nel mondo nuovo, a young lady, your generation, wrote, ai giovani non mancano gli ideali, ma la fiducia. Hanno bisogno di qualcuno che creda in loro. I agree. You are not lacking ideals, and certainly you want to make this world, your country, but also Europe, a better place. And indeed, idealism and courage are needed given the size of the challenges we are facing, and I see it as a part of my responsibility and that of my generation, but also the responsibility of our governments to support you in any respect and to show the necessary trust and confidence in your abilities that you deserve. So thank you very much for your attention, and looking forward to the discussion.
So, thank you very much, Ambassador, for this very. And now we should open to the conversation, to the Conversazione sull'Europa, and we'll have some researchers, some members of Associazione Guido Carli that prepare some questions for you. I would like just to tell the audience that we are under the Chatham House rules, and just call the people that presented some questions. So I would like Giulia Bonomo to ask her question.
Good evening. My first question is, in your opinion, Does the current difficulty faced by the German economy stem solely from the international context, and particularly from the increased cost from one hand due to the Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine, and from the other from the reduced exports caused by the slowdown of China's economy? Or do you think there are other reasons adding to those challenges? And if so, which ones?
No, I think that, of course, we are, as I said, we are facing in the economic field important challenges, and I think we have to now to get our act together. I think that will be a very important theme also in the upcoming electoral campaign. How Germany sort of get back, to economic growth, and I think that is a key question not only for Germany but also for Europe, because given its size, Germany plays a very important role in Europe, and finally also, there is a direct nexus, I think, between economic performance and also the ability, to shape political developments. So in that respect, I think that is something which we're going to work on, but that does not. Even these. The discussions we're having about the German economy does not detract us. From the from our responsibility with regard, for instance, supporting the Ukraine with regards to the necessity to invest more in defense. Germany this year, for the first time, since many years, is spending more than 2% of the GDP on defense. I think that's a very important development. So I think that underlines the fact that we have fully understood, Germany's responsibility also for making NATO stronger, making the European Union stronger, and it is not by coincidence that Germany is now the second most important provider of weapons to the Ukraine after the US, and also on the financial side, among the European nations, the one who is making the most important contribution. So in that respect, on the one hand, of course, we are going economically through more difficult times, but at the same time, when it comes to giving answers, to the strategic challenges in the field of security policy, I think, Germany is really fully living up to its responsibilities. So you should not be worried about that.
Thank you, Giusy Morisco.
Good evening. My question is the German government considering supporting the automotive sector through direct subsidies or any other incentives?
Well, that's a good question. So it's not easy for me to answer this question because, we have an outgoing government. So, the Chancellor will ask the question of confidence in the Bundestag in 3 weeks' time, and then the parliament will resolve. So this government will very likely not take any major decisions. But nevertheless, I think the discussion has already started what to do with the German automotive industry. The Vice Chancellor, Ministry of the Economy, Robert Habeck, a couple of days ago, I think it was yesterday still, the day before yesterday, organized again another sort of summit meeting with representatives of the German industry, where he said that measures, should be taken. You can think about measures, for instance, in order to quickly reduce the price of energy, electricity, and particularly for industry, including automotive. There are other ideas, going to the direction of state aids. That is obviously something the President of the Commission, von der Leyen, mentioned today in her speech, that the European Commission will take care of that, because I think that the problem of the automotive in Europe is not just a German one. I mean, it's here in Italy, we have it in France as well. So in that respect, it's important that also European Commission takes care of that. And she obviously said that it will be a very focal point also for the work of the Commission. And I think that finally, we need to find a European answer to the problems of the European automotive with regard, to the position of German automotive companies on the Chinese market, and that is, the question of the conditions, for working there. So we need to establish a level playing field, between our companies working in China and Chinese companies working here. There's a question of the subsidies for Chinese companies and how we're going to react to that. Question of punitive tariffs, etc., etc. So, that is a whole strategic debate which we now need to have, not only in Germany, but also in Europe. But I think everybody will agree that something must be done. At the same time, of course, there are sort of issues which the companies have to solve. There's a question of productivity. There's a question of wages, etc., etc. And that is now being discussed in the case of Volkswagen between the management and the trade unions. And the management of Volkswagen has said, well, we really need to reduce costs because we cannot go on like that, because what is the management is saying, but also I'm not a specialist, but observers are saying that the fact that, for instance, Volkswagen did so well on the Chinese market, enabled Volkswagen, to be more sort of relaxed with regard to the cost side in Europe, and that is now changing because profits, have fallen dramatically on the Chinese market, and that limits, also the flexibility on the cost side here in Europe. So many aspects, but I think that is a discussion which we need to have, and we need to come to quick decisions very soon.
Giovannelli.
Good evening, dear Ambassador. I think you have already answered in part to this question, but I prepared in advance. I would like to make this question because I think it's a little known news. It's not very in Italy. In a joint statement made in Warsaw, the foreign ministers of France, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, and the United Kingdom did acknowledge that our shared security is under unprecedented strain. They stated that Russia is systematically undermining the European security architecture, highlighting that Moscow's escalation of hybrid activities against NATO and European Union countries is unprecedented in both variety and scale. Hence, it generates significant security risks. In your opinion, could Germany's political crisis and its potential outcomes influence the process of strengthening NATO and Europe's security? Thank you.
No, thank you very much for this question. First of all, I don't think that we have a crisis in Germany. It's the end of the coalition, but as I said, the end of the coalition is not the end of the world. You have some experience here in Italy with any coalitions, not recently, but in the post-war Italian history. So, and that is also something which we experience in Germany, several times. So I would not. We have a constitutional process which is ongoing right now, and I'm quite optimistic that we will, at the end of the day of these elections, will sort of be able to form a stable government. Which in the field of foreign security, we will see a lot of continuity in any respect. And that is also true, for Germany's role in NATO. That's true for also our support to the Ukraine. So in that respect, I'm I'm not concerned at all. I think we will continue to spend more than 2% of our GDP on defense. And I think we would also continue to work on strengthening European capabilities, which I said is very important. So trying to really develop also a European defense industry, which is really, really, really necessary to get a bit more, what one could call European sovereignty, if you want, in the field of defense. We will ever always sort of need the U.S. support in many respects and U.S. role here in Europe, but I think we need to, as Europeans, to get our act together. And I think if you look at what the parties in Germany from the center left to the center right are saying, that also always goes into the same direction, that we need to do more in defense, and that Germany has a really important role to play in NATO and the European Union, also when it comes to security.
Emanuele Solito.
Good evening. My question is, with regard to Europe's competitiveness and in light of the recent Draghi report, which scenarios might emerge for Europe following Trump election and his promise of raising tariffs? Thank you.
Well, yes, I think that, I mean, first of all, we have to see what the Trump administration will come up with. So we have seen the announcement that, yes, I mean, the Trump administration intends to raise tariffs with regard to Mexico and Canada. We have also heard President Trump's announcements, I mean, during the electoral campaign with regard to Europe, but at the end of the day, I think we need to see what the Trump administration will decide when it comes to the, I mean, the economic relationship with Europe. I think that Europe is very much interested in a constructive relationship with the US. I think we have, I mean, we are still in a win-win situation when it comes to the transatlantic market. And of course, that's protectionist tendencies are not, certainly not in Europe's interest, but finally also not in the US interest. But, of course, we need to prepare ourselves to all possible options. But I think structurally, I think we need to do what Mario Draghi has told us to improve our competitiveness and, I mean, to work making our industries stronger, to modernize them, to invest more in research, to support startups, etc., etc. I think these are, and I think that Prime Minister Meloni was quite right when she sort of a couple of days, or I mean 2 weeks ago, said something like, we Europeans should stop just lamenting on what's happening outside, be it in China, be it in the US and elsewhere. We just focus more on what we can do and what we should be doing. And in that respect, I think that the Draghi report, but also the report of Enrico Letta is providing us with many, many good ideas. And now it's, I think, the responsibility of the EU Commission, but also, I mean, German, Italian government, I mean, to put this into practice as far as possible.
Thank you. Federica Mucci.
Thank you. So my question is, Germany has always played a pivotal role in strengthening the European Union. So what is your country's position on a proposed enlargement to include new members such as the Western Balkan countries or Ukraine?
We are very much in favor. I can be very clear on that. We have always been, like Italy, proponents of the of bringing the countries of the Western Balkans into the European Union. And now also we will start accession negotiations with Ukraine and Moldova. And I think it's our assessment that enlarging the European Union at the end of the day, I mean, it's a lot about history, because this country, belonged to Europe. But it's also a geostrategic necessity because, as I said, we're living in a time of geostrategic competition. That means that a vacuum doesn't exist. So, if the European Union leaves a vacuum in its neighborhood, this vacuum will be filled. And it will, and in the Western Balkans and Ukraine, we see, and Russia is trying to increase its influence by all means. So in that respect, we have an interest, as far as our direct neighborhood is concerned, to bring this into the European fold. And for that reason, EU enlargement is a geostrategic necessity. At the same time, I think we need really, but for that to happen, these countries need to adapt their structures, to the European, what we call the European acquis. So the whole set of sort of European standards, which make the European Union a club which works, adopting, rules of the single market, in order to fully exploit the single market, etc., etc. But at the same time, we also need to prepare ourselves for accepting new members. And that essentially means also we need to think about what does enlargement mean, bring the Ukraine and others in. What does that mean, for our culture policy, for the cohesion funds, etc., etc. For the whole sort of financial aspect. And also what does it mean for decision making? Now, with 27 member states, it's still sometimes difficult to come in the field, for instance, of foreign security policy, to a common decision because we have the principle of unanimity. That means all 27 member states have to say yes. That is quite often very difficult. In particular, and maybe also even dangerous in the field of crisis. A European Union with 35 member states, it will be even more difficult to come to a joint decision on the basis of unanimity. And that is why my government is very much in favor of introducing qualified majority voting. And for that purpose, we have now sort of formed in Brussels a group of countries, and Italy is part of that, who work in favor of of introducing qualified majority voting when it comes to foreign security, but also to taxes. So, and that is not easy because some member states say, well, that is maybe not a good idea, because then the big states, are sort of dominating the European Union. So we need to find a way, to introduce qualified majority in a way that is acceptable to everybody. And nobody has, the impression to be dominated by the big ones. So, but I think that is really, really important. Enlargement is important, but at the same time, we really need, to see that the European Union with more member states is really able to act. Because if that's not the case, enlargement will sort of produce a lot of problems which we don't want to see. So, on the one hand, enlargement, yes, but EU reform, on the other hand, also very important.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Alessia Pauletti.
So Germany has recently increased its defense budget and its contribution to NATO in line with the member of the organization. And in which direction do you think such boost to military cooperation could redefine your country's role within the Atlantic Alliance?
Yeah, we discussed, increased defense spending, but that is not all of that. I think we have also made important decisions with regards to to provisions when it comes to sending troops. To give you one example, a strategic challenge for NATO is to strengthen what we call the eastern flank. And for that reason, Germany will deploy for the first time since the Second World War, actually, a heavily armored brigade to Lithuania. So that is, a brigade is huge and on a permanent basis. So that I think that gives you an idea that we really take this very seriously. I think that the German defense minister Pistorius, but also our chief of defense, they constantly speak about the necessity to make the Bundeswehr what you call in German kriegstüchtig. That means ready to fight a war within the next 5 years. And that has something to do with, our analysis, NATO's analysis of the development of Russian capabilities. So in that respect, to avoid such a horrible scenario, it is important that we improve our deterrence. And in order to improve deterrence, we need sort of to strengthen, the capabilities of the Bundeswehr, but of all armies within NATO. So in that respect, we take this very, very seriously, and I think that also the next government will sort of act on this basis.
Thank you. Valerio Flavio Ghizzoni.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to you, Ambassador. Huge thanks to the Association and our President, Federico Carli, for giving us the chance of asking you this question. We spread out the question we gathered over the past few days. So, by my side, from both a geopolitical and domestic policy perspective, how important is it for Germany, despite its current difficulty as Europe's economic engine, to develop an autonomous nuclear deterrence capability, particularly in light of the threats posed by the Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine and continuous threat to European security?
Yes, that's a very sensitive question, of course. Germany has committed itself, in the non-proliferation treaty, but also in the treaty on the final sort of regulation of the German unity, the 2+4 treaty, which covered the external aspects of German unification, that Germany will will never sort of possess or use nuclear weapons. So legally, that is a very strong commitment. And at the same time, Germany sort of has an important responsibility in the alliance when it comes to so-called nuclear sharing agreements. That is a particular sort of arrangement within NATO, according to which some nations sort of provide airplanes, and which, in the case of nobody wants to see that ever, but then may use sort of American sort of nuclear bombs, which are totally under American control and so on and so forth. So, but that is a sort of arrangement in which Germany participates, but it does not. This nuclear facility is really totally under American control, and et cetera, et cetera. But that is, where Germany, like Italy and others, play a role when it comes to NATO's nuclear deterrence, but when it comes to national nuclear capabilities, that is legally excluded for Germany. But you are right, we are in a difficult situation because Europe is being confronted with an aggressive Russia, and Russia is a nuclear superpower. And it has made clear, that it is ready sort of to use sort of military means to achieve its goal. We have heard also about nuclear threats, nuclear threats from the side of President Putin many, many times, and that of course is an uncomfortable situation. But again, what we have right now is, still what we call the extended nuclear guarantee of the United States for Europe, And that is absolutely essential. That is absolutely essential when it comes to nuclear deterrence. And that is one of the reasons why we have a vital interest, in maintaining this strong transatlantic relationship with the US and a strong US role in NATO, including nuclear deterrence. On top of that, you have independent national nuclear forces in France and Great Britain. They also play a role when it comes to nuclear deterrence, but absolutely the core, of NATO's nuclear deterrence is really the US. So in that respect, that is absolutely key. And so in that respect, I think we have a key interest in working well with any US administration.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Anna Pollicelli.
Thank you and good evening. My question is, with Trump set to return to the White House and given his past administration evident dissatisfaction with Germany's economic stance, as he likely aims to counter those policies against by means of tariffs, how are your country's business world and diplomacy preparing to address the foreseeable American economic approach? Thank you.
Yeah, we discussed that already a bit. I think that at the end of the day, of course, the best way to prepare ourselves, to any development is making ourselves stronger and improving our competitiveness. That is, and so far, Mario Draghi is absolutely right. There's no alternative to that. As I said, we are living in a time which is sort of characterized by fierce competition, not only in the military field, but also in the economic field. So in that respect, for that reason, it is important to work together. The German Foreign Minister, Annalena Baerbock, a couple of days said, the answer to make America great again is Europe united. And I think that's a good point. And that is something which really the new Commission has to work on, and also important member states such as Germany and Italy to do whatever we can in order to make ourselves stronger. That applies, how going to react to tariffs. That's one question. But really the structural point is, as I said, will Europe be a sort of an economic powerhouse in the future? And that is, I think, the key question on which we need to work.
Thank you. We have a last question. Sofia Stefani, please.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity. And this is my question. In the artificial intelligence realm, which programs or initiatives do you think could be strengthened or implemented to boost the Italo-German technological partnership?
Yeah, I think we have indeed, a very important partnership also in the framework of this action plan I mentioned. On Monday, there was a long consultation between our ministers of economy, Habeck and Urso, in Berlin. With Confindustria, BDI, and others on the situation of automotive, very important, but also on these questions because AI is absolutely a game changer, and I think we have very much aware of that both in Italy and in Germany, and for that reason we have to work on this together. And I think it was an excellent idea from the side of the Italian government. To put AI on top of the agenda of the Italian G7 presidency. It played a very important role also at the G7 summit in Borgo Ignazia in Puglia. And also in the bilateral relationship, it is something which we are going to work on. To give you one example, that our ministers of labor are now sort of working and have an intensified exchange on the question of what does AI mean for the labor market? How does it influence our way to work? where are the opportunities and where are the risks. So, I mean, there are certainly opportunities because AI will also create new jobs. But at the same time, we all know that AI will sort of lead to the abolishment of jobs. The jobs will not exist anymore, which existed in the past or still exist today. So that is something which we, being both, I mean, societies which sort of very much build on industry, that is a very important question which we need to tackle. On that one, we have a very close cooperation. On top of that, there is industrial cooperation between our companies, also in the field of research. A couple of months ago, I visited, for instance, the supercomputer in Bologna, Leonardo, very impressive. One of the most performative computers in the world. And for instance, there is a strong collaboration with research institutions also in Germany as far as Leonardo and project in the field of AI is concerned. So there are many fields, in terms of how we're coping with the possible threats and opportunity, but also on the research side. So in that respect, I'm not worried. But again, I mean, that is also a field, where Europe needs to get its act together. If you see, I mean, the enormous amounts of money, Google and Microsoft and others and OpenAI, so I mean, now invest on AI, and if you compare that, I mean, what Europe is investing, I mean, that is a source of, I mean, worry, I think. So, given the enormous importance of AI, I mean, for all areas of life, all sectors of life, I think that is, again, something where we really need to mobilize much more sort of capital, money, investment. And that is an area where we sort of have to do a much better job. Again, point made by Draghi and Letta. So we have, and that is sort of, these are sort of funds which cannot only be provided by governments, I mean, given the fiscal situation in a number of countries, but we have to do a much better job in mobilizing private capital. And for that reason, we need a capital markets union. It's absolutely essential, because right now, I mean, the capital is our European capital, I mean, is moving to the US. At the same time, American equity funds or pension funds are heavily investing in Europe. That is, in the long run, not a really balanced situation, and for that reason, we need to improve our ability, to massively invest in these areas, and for that reason, I think capital markets union and the banking union both are absolutely crucial. Yeah.
Thank you. Ambassador very much for his speech and for answering all these questions. I would like also to thank Elisabetta Fiorentino, the Bundesbank representative here in Italy, for all their support in organizing these. And the nicest thing about the audience, we are overbooking, so this means that we are raising interest on these very important topics. I think the ambassador addressed many issues, and this is what our Associazione can do. The challenges are huge. What we can do is trying to raise the interests of the young generation vis-à-vis these huge challenges and to stimulate critical thinking. So very happy about this, and I thank you, all of you, for being here this evening. Thank you.
Ok, grazie a lei, e mi dispiace che non parlo sufficientemente italiano per rispondere alle vostre questioni. Ok, grazie.